All right, what's up? I am back with another episode of Book Talk, author interview. Tonight rather, I have the wonderful opportunity of talking with a another independent author. Let's go ahead and invite her in. Hey, how's it going? Um, Let me go ahead and invite her. Let me see. I have been really enjoying doing these. I hope you've been enjoying watching them. Let me see. Shoot, I know she changed her handle since we last talked. So let me take a minute to find her. I'm gonna look. I have my laptop out right here. Um, Let me take a minute to find her on here. Next week. Um, oh, not next week. Later this week, rather. I'm going to be sitting down and interviewing my daughter on Friday. And so I'm so excited. I can't wait for you all to see that. We're going to be just doing that one straight from YouTube. So turn on your notification. Her coloring book, Miss Fox Teaches Kindness, which is a coloring book and a children's story. And so it's really cute.
Oh,
There
let
she
me turn my
goes.
camera around here. Hello. Hi.
Hey,
It's going
how's it
great.
going?
How are you?
I'm doing good. It's been a beautiful day out here, and so I was glad that we could catch
Yes.
up and talk
Yes,
about your
yes, yes.
book.
I
Yeah, so
am
where
in
are you
San
located?
Antonio, Texas.
Okay,
Right?
Texas in the
Right.
house.
Where are you
All
at?
right, all right.
Okay.
I'm in
Okay.
Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in Texas
Okay.
for a while. Now I'm in Florida,
All
and
right.
so, yeah. Okay, all
Yes,
right. Well, let's
ma'am.
go ahead and get into it. If you don't mind introducing yourself, and then we'll just go ahead and
Okay,
start
so
talking
I
about your book.
am Angela, known as Angie K, and I call myself the book chick because started going places and people would be like, aren't you the book lady? And I'm like, the book lady sounds kind of like bag lady. so I
Oh.
so I named myself the book chick. Born and raised here in San Antonio,
Mm.
Texas. So I've lived here all my life. I am 46 years old. I have two grown children and two grandchildren and one on the way. um,
Wow!
Thank you. So, I
Congrats.
mean, that's pretty much it. I've written 8 books, self-published all of those myself. I've helped about 6 authors self-publish their own. Several of them live here. A couple of them live out of the state. And I created a devotional journal with my aunt that passed away several years ago. But she gave me all these things that she wanted
Mm.
me to put together in a book. So I did that in honor of her.
Wow.
And that's pretty much it so far. Um, 8 books so
Yeah.
far.
Oh my gosh, so much to unpack there. You said, wait a minute, let's go back.
Yes,
Okay, so
ma'am.
8 books, a devotional, you've helped other people publish. How did you get started? Did you pursue this? Did you always know that you wanted to be an author? Or
No,
tell us your story.
I've
How did
always
you
been a
get going?
reader. So that's one thing. Like, I've
Okay.
always been a reader. If you were to have a conversation with my mother, she would tell you there were times, because I used to read out loud when I
Mm.
growing up. I never read to myself. I would read out loud, and my mom would always know because she was
Mm.
like, "You, it'd be like 2 or 3 people in that room, but I know it's just you." So I've always been a reader. I would write down stuff just to be creative, but never really thought about writing a book until a lot of my relatives that
Mm,
read, they were like, well, why haven't you tried writing a book? You're creative. You read a lot. So I was like,
mm,
okay. So I just kind of thought about some things that I've seen on TV, of course, been around certain people, and sat down in pretty much like beginning in middle of 2014 and started writing my first book and finished it in 2015.
wow.
And I just self-published it. I had a little book signing with family and friends just to see what they thought. And it went from there because everybody was like, hey, is it a part two? So I was like, okay. Uh, and so it just went from there. And I just kept writing from that standpoint.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's amazing. And so what do you write in the same genre? Are all books in the same genre? What are they about?
So
Can you
the
give us a
first two
rundown?
that I wrote, it's called The True Essence of Loyalty, and that's general fiction. I would say like drama fiction, women's fiction, more so like a soap
Okay.
opera. And I literally was
Mm,
straight creative, just taking it from, of course, some real life experiences, people I know, things I've seen on TV. I'm a TV
mm,
fanatic. So that's more general fiction. The in second novel, I would say, I call it The Rich Gang, and that's urban literature. I wanted to try my hand at it because that's my favorite
mm,
genre, and
mm-hmm.
my favorite author is Quan. So I wanted to try it.
Okay.
I have not one gangster bone in my body, so I googled everything. But because
Yeah.
of like it's about drugs and money and betrayal and street
Mm,
crime and people killing each other, I put it in that genre. And there's three
okay.
books with that series, and I am making five out of the whole series. I just have to write the next two. um, and then I have two erotica
Wow.
books, and that also came with I like
Mm,
Zane, and I was like, I wonder if I could write it. And
okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
thought of something a little different. And my first book I
Mm-hmm.
wrote, Climate Control, is actually loosely based on someone that I dated. And that was the name he used when he
Wow.
pledged. And so I told him about it, I
Mm,
used it, and I made him a professional, pretty much. And so the second book from that, you could actually read it on its own, but it's kind of like he met his match. Um, and then there's also like
mm.
a third book to the erotica series, but it's not mine. It's actually the guy that the first one is based on. He actually wanted to write his
Wow.
rendition of his own real life stories of women that he's been with when he was active duty. So those are 12 stories of like
Wow.
real life erotica sex situation he was
Mm.
in. So it's
Oh my.
tied to the first one, but the first one's fiction, but that one is purely
Mm.
reality. Purely reality. So I tie those together because I tell
Wow.
women all the time, this is a real person. He lives in Austin, Texas. And so they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to read about him.
Oh my God.
So I don't like to say I'm all over the place. I just like to say I don't want to be put in a box. I
Mm.
want to be able to write,
Okay.
different genres, different things. I haven't tried my hand in children's
Mm.
books or anything yet,
Mm.
but those are just the three genres right now: general fiction, urban literature, and erotica. Right now that I've dived in.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, like you said, and that's the great thing about being a creative writer is you get to choose
Yeah,
what to
yes,
do.
yes,
Okay. And so, yeah, I absolutely, when someone's like, oh no, I just kind of stick to that,
yeah.
that's fine. We create our own
Hmm.
limits and stuff. And so, wow. Okay. So, how has your self publishing experience been? Why self publish over a different option for you?
So self-published is a lot. because you're doing all the work yourself. A lot of myths that go into it, and of course you don't know until you get into it yourself. I mean, my journey has been like up and down. Like, you know, it has its good times, it's had its downtime. And I went with that option in the very beginning, of course, because I was just trying to see, you know, how it would do, how people would respond, and people close to me. So at that point, I'm like, okay, now it's time to get people that aren't close to me. So what steps could I take? And then, so I started looking around social media, and I did go with a publishing service for my first novel after I self-published it first. I went with the service, and in the beginning, it was exciting. I was like, you know, I felt like they were going to do a lot. And I know there's never a guarantee whether, I mean, you're traditionally published or not. But I felt good because of the things they were saying, but that was such a horrible experience for me. I spent more money, of course, than I recouped. And understandably, again, there's no guarantee. However, I felt like everything that they did for what I paid, I basically could have done myself and got the same results, if not more. And so that's when I decided I'm just going to self-publish until it becomes, you know, where I can get with an agent and go that route. I tell authors all the time, you know, it can be rewarding, but it is a lot of work. You know, you have your downtime, you have your good time, you have your ups. But it is a lot of work. It takes a lot of discipline, and you gotta be consistent, and you have to understand that just because this group of people was excited, this next group of people may not, but don't stop there. You know, I know authors that have, that's had one book for 20 years, and every time you see them, they're pushing that book. They're pushing that book. So, so it's been fun. Cause you know, it's fun to go somewhere and somebody's like, I got your book, you know, or I read your book, or I sent your book to my, you know, brother in prison, and several people, you know, read it, you know. So it's exciting, but you know, it takes a lot of work. So it's been good, but you know, I'm not finished. So.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, no, I hear you. You know, it's so funny when you were saying that. I was thinking about, I was able to take a master class a month or so ago. You know, the website masterclass.com. And so they have like, you know, different authors and just business professionals on that website. And I took one with Walter Mosley, and he said he's published 34 books. 34 books. I'm like, okay. And so I'm like you, I've published so far 8 books. I write mostly poetry, fiction, and then I've been really like going hard with writing resources for authors, for indie authors like ourselves, and just putting all my knowledge and information into those books. But I thought, wow, okay, I feel like I still got a ways to go, like you said, and you know, I'm not done yet. This is what I've done. I'm not done yet. But even then, I also think, you know, even with a person that you mentioned who has one book and they've been pushing that one book for 20 years, that's okay too. You know, and maybe you can talk about that, like with your first experience publishing that first book. You know, do you feel like you were almost like encouraged or to keep publishing, or what? Why did you decide to publish more books after your first one, I guess is the question.
It was a couple of reasons. Like, yes, I was encouraged from that first book, like, you know, wow, you know, Angie, you can write, you know, you're creative, you're interesting. I couldn't put the book down. You should write more. And then the second part of that is, even with that, once you start, if you are truly a writer, you know, once you start, the ideas keep coming and coming and coming. And if you don't write them down or put them somewhere, you may lose them. And I just kept coming up with different stories. And, you know, like I said, I'm a TV person. So looking at things all the time, I'm always thinking about, ooh, that'll be a good story. Ooh, that'll be a good story. And so that
Mm-hmm.
just kept me writing. And it still does, of course, I may not sometimes, but I'll still jot down things. But yeah, from that very first book,
Mm-hmm.
the bug just got me with yeah,
It got you.
with the motivation and the ideas, it just got
Yeah.
me.
Hmm. Yeah, the California Creole say,
Yes.
me too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Inspiration is everywhere.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's how it happens for a lot of authors, and sometimes I ask people like, you know, because there's this idea or whatever thought that I've heard from being in different
Hmm.
writing groups about, oh, I have, different books, but I'm saving them for, a traditional publisher or whatever, and they don't want to put their stories out. But I said, well, why don't you just put it
Yes.
out? Because aren't you always gonna have a story to tell? Aren't you
Right.
always gonna keep writing? And some people say, no, this is it for me. And I thought, oh, okay, that's cool. But I'm of that kind of
Yes.
same mindset that, listen, I'm gonna put
Hmm.
this story out there, and I'm gonna always have ideas. I don't think that I will ever run out because um like we said earlier, inspiration is
Right.
everywhere. I feel like, after you put out, you go through the ideas that you have, you never know what might
Exactly.
inspire you or what might spark your interest to write
Right.
another book. And like I said, Walter Mosley,
Yeah.
34 published
Yes.
books. Come on. And I think that, and maybe you can talk about just your progression of like your writing skills. How has that been for you over the last 8 years or over the last couple of years from book one to now book eight? Have you been aware of your own progress, or can you talk to us a little bit
Yes.
about that?
Oh, yes, of course. Like when I look back at even, of course, even the edited, once you get it edited, but still, when I look back at the first
Yeah.
book as opposed to the last book, I could tell very much that I've matured a lot in how I
Mm-hmm.
word things. I've matured a lot in the different words. I'm trying to, instead of this standard word, you may use something a little bit more eclectic or eloquent. So I have
Mm-hmm.
noticed, of course, I want to
Mm-hmm.
keep growing and keep getting better. But that, I believe that's one good thing about being able to self-reflect on your journey, is being able to go back and can tell
Yeah.
where you've grown. And also because you got to
Mm-hmm.
know, where you want to go. And so I've seen where, I've looked and said, oh, that sounds real plain right there. That sounds real like, okay. And then
Yeah.
looking at
Mm-hmm.
one of the erotica books, I'm like, you wrote that, girl? Like, okay, you know.
Oh my goodness.
um and so I
Yeah.
think that again, for an author, aspiring writer that, wants to continue to grow, they should always look back and be able to
Mm-hmm.
tell. Because I mean, if you can't tell that something has changed for the better, then you need to start asking
Mm-hmm.
yourself, okay, so what am I doing or not doing? Because this looks the
Mm-hmm.
same. You should never stay the same. I'm pretty sure. Well, of course, I've read Walter Mosley, and his genre may
Mm-hmm.
be the same, but his style of writing, is the
Yeah.
same but different with each story. He gets,
Mm-hmm.
really, really eloquent in one thing, and then he may get real gutter, in the next. So,
Yeah.
um, and so
Mm-hmm.
yes, I love being able to see that, because even little stuff that I may write, if I write a blog for somebody, or or help someone write something that they need, I'll look back at what I've written from
Mm-hmm.
someone else, and I'll be able to see the difference between what I've written with them and who I've written recently, because that might have been a couple of years ago, and I could tell, okay, that I
Mm-hmm.
tried some different things, and I grew, from that 2 years ago, from how I worded their essay as opposed to today. So yeah, I think that's a great
Mm-hmm.
thing for any, any artist.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that's why, again, speaking to anyone who's just kind of on the verge of, stepping into the publishing world, is your first one might not be the best. I know my first book that I put out was in 2018. And it was a devotional. I had written a book for single moms who love God. And I was so excited. I was like, okay, like, I'm just gonna do this book. I had a great idea. So I just did it. Like, I just did the whole process myself. I put it out there, was like marketing it, and then I went and looked at the reviews, and they were like typos up the yin yang. We can tell that you did it. What? I took that book down so fast. I took that book down so fast. I was like, okay, wait. I totally did edit it myself. But I thought I had it going on. I thought that I could edit my book myself because at the time I was working for a publisher as an editor. So I just thought, that I had done enough. What? No, I did not. But looking back on those moments, it's like, man, had I not done that, had I not put myself out there, I might not be where I am today, sitting down, talking with other authors. I have my own publishing company, things like that, And I think that's the thing about it, is just that long term, one piece of advice that I would give to authors is, plan to be in it for a while and plan to grow, because it might not be what you expect it to be when you first get started. And something that you had even mentioned was like, even working with publishers, and I'm so sorry you didn't have the experience that you expected. And that's one thing that I think about all the time as a publisher. Like, I want to make sure that I'm mitigating or being transparent with people as far as what they can expect, what I'm going to deliver, and things like that, because man, it really can, that customer satisfaction, the customer service piece is big. And it's absolutely a huge reason why a lot of people self-publish. But then there's this stigma, and you can share your opinion on this, about self-published books are not professional. How do you feel about that? That, some readers feel like, oh, I'm not going to read a self-published book because it's not going to be the same experience as like a popular author.
And I tell people all the time, until you're an author, you're not going to believe anything else. You believe that because the only authors you are paying attention to may be celebrity authors, but not your neighbor. That your neighbor probably has a book that has had enough reviews to be a bestseller. And because that is also a stigma. A lot of people out here, they believe that they believe that being a bestseller is someone reading your book and saying it's the best book. And I've explained, to other authors and readers, that's not the only way you become a bestseller. Self-publishing is just like the music industry now. A lot of artists are doing it themselves. They're not on any labels, and it all goes with publishing. It goes into what you want for yourself. And so when you think about publishing, they believe, oh, well, it's not professional if it's not with Simon & Schuster, because they have the editors, they have the backing, they have, everything you need. And I'll tell an individual that may be very true, but that also comes with what do you have to give? What do you have to sacrifice? And I'm not saying that's not a good choice, because you never know. Some celebrity authors, some well-established authors do both. Like I said, Quan, the author, he does both. He has in his contract that he will choose what book he wants the publisher to publish, or he's going to self-publish. And he taught me at a festival, it's all about control. It's all about what you want to control for yourself. And that is what publishing is about. And when I got into kind of helping people self-publish, that's what I told them. And I'm sure as you do as well. There's three
Mm-hmm.
type of publishing. You could traditionally and shop your book around agents. You
Yeah.
can, pay into a service and they do the work for you. Just write, and we do the work for you. And then you can do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of those comes with certain things you're going to have to give up or do or
Yeah.
sacrifice, period, no matter what.
Yeah.
But the reward comes in when of course, because of the exposure, because of the reviews, because, and that goes again into being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think self-publishing, once again, it could be just as great as being traditionally published, just as great as paying into
Yeah.
someone doing the work, because you may not have time to do the work. And so you
Mm-hmm.
allow someone to do what they do best, and your reward may be just as great as if a traditional publisher has it. To be honest, let's be honest, you might more than likely see more money when you self-publish or or go through a service. You may see
Yeah.
more money.
Yeah.
You get someone that wants to make your book into a film and you own the rights to your book. What you think about
Mm-hmm.
that? Okay, well, if I own the rights and somebody wants to do a movie deal with me, that means that all of that money is coming to me. If I was belonging to
Mm-hmm.
somebody, then that I may not get
Yeah.
as much. So, it any way you publish, any way, it could be great reward, self-publish or not. Is about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about what you are willing to put in it and what you're willing to sacrifice to get where you want to go. So, and it's a lot,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. One of my college professors, and I always kind of go back to this because it stuck with me and has really impacted my life. I was really a college professor, and then I had a business coach tell me a couple things. One thing that I was told is, everything is free in a mousetrap. Everything is free in a mousetrap. And so a lot of people want to go the traditional route, but they don't understand the
yeah,
magnitude of what they might be giving up. However, it also can be a strategy. It also could be a strategy. You might say, I'm going to work with traditional publisher because I know that most traditional publishers can distribute my
hmm
book wider or get the exposure that I need, and that's absolutely a strategy. But it's going to
yeah,
come at a cost. In traditional publishing is going to be very costly, and even though it's something that I do offer authors, I give them the option. Listen, if you don't want to traditionally publish your book, because I am going to have a lot of the control over it, if you're okay with that, okay. But if not, I do
yeah,
work with authors in a hybrid model
hmm
or self-publishing, because like you said, depending on the level of control
right,
that you want to have, well, then there's going to be different things. You can't say, oh, I don't want to pay for a service, but I want to have
right,
full control. That's
right.
not a such thing. There's no
No
such thing
such
as
thing.
that, because if a publisher is investing their resources, their money, their time in your book, and they're paying you whatever, you best believe
Yes.
it's going to have to be to their standards and to their liking, and they're going to have full control over that. And I think that can be sometimes like, oh, like just something that goes over a lot of
Right.
people's heads, because they're not really realizing that, oh no, you're giving
hmm
up a lot of your control when you do some of these other models versus self-publishing. You have full control. And I feel like self-publishing authors are very much like
Right.
entrepreneurs.
That's
This
your
is your
business.
own business. This
Exactly.
is your own baby. You have to
Yes.
fund it. You got to find a
Yes.
team. You don't have to do it all on your own, but if you want, some help with this, you got to find your team, things like that. And then, when you put it like that, people are like, "Oh, yeah,
Yes.
it's a whole
Yes.
business. Your book is actually a
Yes.
product, and you can, the success of your book is
Up to
100%
you.
up to you." And so some people think, oh, that's just too much. And so these
hmm
different options, it just, like you said, depends on what you want to
Yeah.
do, how much control you want to have, what your strategy might be. And I tell people, hey,
Right.
try them
Right.
all and see
What works
what
for
works
you?
for you. If you know that, we already talked about, if you know that you got plenty of stories to write or whatever, you got tons of stories to write, why not try them all and see what happens? And then you can kind of determine from there, okay, I'm going to stick with
Mm-hmm.
this, or, I'm going to keep being
Right.
fluid, or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
so,
That, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I just like the people that I've worked with, I gave them the options, that were out there. And I'm like, if you want
Mm-hmm.
to go that route, I can, assist you with finding a literary agent, you know, but what I want you to do is research how each one works first. I said,
Yeah.
because the the mindset of an author or aspiring author with traditional publishing, the first mindset is they're going to get my book, they're going to cut me a check, and they're going to shop my book around, and I'm just going to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mindset of the majority of authors that
Mm-hmm.
come in that want traditional
Mm-hmm.
publishing. And I tell them, research how that may work. Longevity, not
Mm-hmm.
just in the beginning, because yeah, once they choose you, then it's this they're going to tell you is going to happen, and
Yeah.
then this is what you're going to get out of it because we're doing this. And then they may say, now if we do this, then you'll get this. And I said, so I tell them, research how that works, because I can tell you at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, if you go in with that mindset and just like, okay, yeah, and then you look back
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I didn't know it was going to work like that. I didn't know they were going to take the rights of my book
Mm-hmm.
away, even though I get 30%. I don't have the rights to this book. So Warner Brothers called for a
Yeah.
movie, and I don't have a say so on, how it's going to go. And I'm like, and there's
Mm-hmm.
authors that don't care about that. It all
Yeah.
depends, like
Yeah.
like we said, it all depends on what you see for yourself and where you see your book going. So, I
Mm-hmm.
tell research even before I work with you, research what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So you know that I'm not
Right.
just feeding you anything to try to get your money or get your book or whatever the case may be, because I get it. I get it. I
Right.
understand. That's your baby. You want to protect it
Mm-hmm.
at all costs. So it's I tell what I've gotten, of course, from some of the authors, unfortunately, that I've worked with. They get so excited about people reading it and so excited about the
Mm-hmm.
first part. Like, I want people to read it. I want people to be excited. And then when it comes out and you have those people excited, and then that's it. And then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay, what we doing? They're not the only people in the world. Like, and then that, and then that's it. It's like the
Yeah.
excitement wears off. They don't want to talk about it. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want, and I'm like, so you have to understand why also. Why you want it to become an author, why you want to
Mm-hmm.
create the stories you create, and where do you see yourself as an author going with the stories you create. You have to know your why. Because if
Mm-hmm.
your why is just to be famous, or your why is to make some money real quick, that
Yeah.
you're not. You have to be excited
You're
about
gonna
your
be
book. No, if
disappointed.
nobody else is
Yeah.
excited,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be excited about your book. I don't care if
Yeah.
ain't nobody else excited, or like my first reviews for The Rich Gang, a lot, there's a few people that was like, oh, it's just too much going on. I got,
Mm.
confused, in the first couple of chapters, and I stopped reading it. It's just too much, or typical story or whatever. And I'm like, hey,
Mm.
as y'all are saying this, I have others saying, wow, you know, this is a good book,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I was surprised to see that. I was on the edge of my seat, or whatever. But I'm excited about my book. I look at my book and I'm like,
Right.
girl, look at that book. Look at that cover,
You did that,
So I'm like,
yeah.
it starts with you. You haven't been, if
Mm-hmm.
you're not excited, if you're like,
Come on.
it's all right, then that's how people are going to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you're going to go about it.
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to go in with the mindset of, if I'm being traditionally published, I have to be excited so they can be excited. But I also have to believe that, hey, I'm doing this because if I'm writing a book about helping mentally challenged children, my purpose of that
Mm-hmm.
is to help mentally challenged children. So if one child gets
Yeah.
healed from this book, that's great. But if you go in with,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, they're gonna get it and I'm gonna be famous and everybody gonna know me. And then when you don't get famous in 6 months, you don't talk about it no more. You don't want to talk about the children. You don't want to talk about what was the purpose? What's the purpose of
Yeah.
writing it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always the why and the where do you see your why going? And I just want to be I
Mm-hmm.
just want to create stories as far as fiction. I want to create stories that
Mm-hmm.
people can relate to because I feel like fiction is still reality. It's always somebody
Mm-hmm.
or somewhere, something that you've seen or heard when you read a
Yeah.
book, of someone that's written it, and whether it is fiction or nonfiction. So I just want to create a reality fiction platform where people can read it, be entertained because they know this kind of girl that went out and did this, or they know this kind of dude that, had this going on. And they used it to entertain themselves, relax, have fun. When they've had a long
Mm-hmm.
day at work, they can pick up one of my books and
Mm-hmm.
decompress, and that is my why. I have not written
Yeah.
anything nonfiction yet. And I,
Mm.
whatever God has for me, I plan on doing that, as in addition to the devotional, and that was, of course, probably my aunt.
Mm-hmm.
When she started getting sick, she wrote down all
Mm-hmm.
these expressions of comfort for herself. And she gave them to me and was
Wow.
like, do something with these. And I was like, okay. And then she passed away and I wasn't going to do anything.
Mm.
But then her daughter, my cousin, was like, she gave them to you for a reason. And so I
Mm-hmm.
put them in a journal and put Bible verses with them and told people, this is
Wow.
for you when you start to feel a way, or every day, you could look at one of these and write down your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling a way, look at one of these quotes to guide you back. And so my why for that
Yeah.
is that, because I know that's why she did it, to
Mm-hmm.
put her mindset back into being grateful and, being
Mm.
prayerful, even though she didn't feel good and, and she was sick. And so even if that didn't sell
Mm-hmm.
20 copies, I knew the 5 copies that it
Yeah.
did sell, that those people have come back. When you making
Mm-hmm.
another one, are you going to make another one? Because she gave me pages of them,
Mm.
you know. So that,
Wow.
that's my why. I'm like, but all authors want to become a bestseller. All authors do, you know,
Yeah.
but that time will come when it's supposed to come. If I'm helping someone,
Mm-hmm.
or someone genuinely loves reading my stories, you know, that's what makes me full about it.
Yeah. 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 And that's important, establishing your why even early on, outside of just, of course, everybody's goal is to make some, I mean, maybe your goal is not to make money, but I want to say
Right.
majority of us, we don't just
Right.
set out and invest in the book and the
Right.
publishing process and all that to not make
Right.
no money, that's unless that you just don't care, or unless, whatever. But most of us hope to make some money back. But outside of that, like you said, but also people, I think sometimes we can complicate our whys as well. Like it doesn't have to be some big old thing. It could be
Mm-hmm.
simple. I want to publish this book because I want my family to know that I was here.
Yeah.
You know, like you said about your aunt, she gave those to you. Put this out. This helped me. This can help
Right.
somebody else. Even after I'm
Mm-hmm.
gone, this can still help somebody else. And a lot of times, that's what it is for authors. Sometimes you might not even be alive to see your work pay off. And I don't know how we're getting on this subject, but I just want to even put that out there
Right.
for people who, oh, I'm never going to put my book out because of whatever reason. Well, put it out if it's not just for your family to say, hey, we had an author, we have
Right.
authors in our family. You can get their book, especially if you're putting it out on like Amazon or whatever platforms. It's gonna stay up there. Books last
Right.
forever. I'm
Forever.
gonna say books last forever until somebody come and take it down or whatever. But books
Forever.
typically
Yep.
last forever. We're still reading things from the
Yes.
1920s. We still reading things. If you're reading the Bible, especially, I mean, come on, books last for
Generation.
generation through generation through generation. And so, that's for me, that's one of the reasons why I write books is, I had grandparents who were storytellers, but they never wrote anything down. And I thought when they passed, I was like, dang, I
Mm-hmm.
wish I had some of their stories written down to go back and read. But now for me, it is about that legacy part, but it also is about
Yes.
helping this community because one of the biggest things that we continue to hear in the book publishing world is there's not a lot of
Right.
people of color that publish books. And one of the things, back to Walter Mosley, one of the things in his master class that he said is published books are kind of, and I'm paraphrasing, he said they are kind of a representation
Mm-hmm.
of history. And so if we're not seeing a lot of people of color with published books, it almost looks like we're not
Right.
a part of history. And, not even to get political with the way that things are going, you know, certain people want to
Yes.
water down Black American history or not tell it
Yes.
all the way how it was and, get rid of it. And so I think now more than anything is a great time for people of color to be telling their stories and putting them out in the form of a book,
Right.
however you do it, however
Right.
you publish it, self-publish, whatever. Right now is a good time. And so for me, that's a big reason why, as a
Mm-hmm.
Black woman, is, I want my daughter to be able to, not only say, hey, my mom was a publisher, hey, my
Mm-hmm.
mom also published my book, but, we were a part of this movement of getting more people of color in the book
Right.
publishing industry. And so for me, that's whether I see a
Right.
dollar or whatever, which, come on, that's, I'm being, kind of silly, but that's my
Yes.
why. And I think that your why will
Mm-hmm.
get you through some
Yes.
difficult experiences because let's be honest, and you can even talk about this yourself, it's not always
No.
peachy. It ain't always
No.
it's like
It,
up and down.
yes.
And so can you tell us about any of your nightmare experiences just for people who, might not be aware that things can go wrong?
Um. Yeah. So many things can go wrong, unfortunately. But you have to keep pushing. You can. I would say, finding a good editor can be crazy because
Come on.
it's in finding it. Now, you could be very lucky to know someone, another writer that can recommend you to someone that they've already, that they already trust. And so you could be lucky in that. But if not, yeah, unfortunately, you're going to learn trial and error. You're going to, unfortunately get some editors
Yeah.
that are going to do craziness, and you gonna have to start all over and send it to a whole another editor because this one just fouled it all up. There's also figuring out what makes sense as far as, like book fairs, festivals, pop-up shops, to get your name out there, and promoting, marketing, period, finding out what makes sense. I've been to, several business workshops where, they talk about marketing and promoting and how often to do it on social media. And at first, I was like, oh, I don't have to really do it that way. But when I did and was consistent, I saw why they teach that, because you have to try a lot of different things to find out what works best. And it is tedious. Tell authors all the time, no, you don't have to do this kind of work with traditional publishing. But again, that goes with sacrifice of certain things. If you're doing this yourself, yes, it's going to be very tedious. It's going to get frustrating because you're doing it all by yourself. Okay, you can have a team of people but you're still overseeing because it's your stuff. So you're not going to just let anybody just do anything. So learning what makes sense, festivals, especially pop-up shops and book fairs, you're going to these things with 60, 70 other authors. All the books are different, but still, as a consumer, everybody that walks in that door is not going to buy a book from every author. So, you may have paid $250, $300 just to get there. And understanding, you may sell one book, you may not sell any. And you have to, oh my goodness, and not necessarily being okay with that, but understanding that is something that you're gonna have to do in order to learn what makes sense. I've done that. I've been there, done that, and I'm still learning what makes sense. But I also now I know what to look for. Because there's certain things that I don't participate in. I don't go to certain festivals because I'm like, nobody's really going to be looking for a book there. I may go as a informational person, because I offer services, not necessarily selling books. But then still, certain things you're going to find out just doesn't make sense as an author or editor or publisher to go to this. So I'm not going to do that. That goes again into the mindset. If you're in it just because you feel like, oh, I can write something real quick and it's, people are going to be interested in it just because it's me and I'm going to make money. It's the wrong mindset. Wrong mindset. Because you may make $100,000, just say, the first round. But then what happens after that? You don't make nothing else. If that was your mindset, you're going to stop. You ain't going to write nothing else. You ain't going to go nowhere else. You ain't going to even talk about it if that was your mindset. So I've had those, where, patches where you're not selling anything. Ain't nobody going on your website. Ain't nobody asking you about anything. There's going to be patches that happens. And you have to keep pushing if you know your why. You have to keep pushing because trillions of people in the world. You can't base it off of one moment, and one cluster of time, because there are seasons, and this season it may be, it may be time for you to do something else in this season, and then the next season you go back to that. So, I've had all those nightmares, editing nightmares, festival nightmares, reviews, like you said, review nightmares, understanding that everybody, everybody's not going to support you, and that's okay, because everybody didn't like Jesus. So everybody don't like Oprah, but everybody don't like Tyler Perry. A lot of people don't like Tyler Perry, but Tyler Perry be doing it. He is doing it. And
and do not care.
He do what he
Yeah.
do. He write what he write, and he's not worried about what nobody has to say. He does what he does, and he keep
Yeah.
going, and he keep it pushing, and because of his why, and that is what matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and you nailed it. You nailed it. You said it right there because man, like we've been saying, it is, and I always feel like the publishing process itself, especially, it can be very much parallel with just your personal life, even, and you have to take your personal life into account during
Mm-hmm.
this publishing process. If your finances are kind of jacked up in this season, you know, don't think that this book is going to
Right.
automatically be your
Yes.
escape or automatically help you
Yes.
bring in income. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to publish a book right away. I'm going to start seeing thousands come in, or kind of like you said, I'm going to publish my book. I'm going to write my book. I'm going to find a literary agent, and then boom, the money's going to start going in. And it's like, man, that would be great if
That's
life
what that
happened like
don't
that. But
right.
life itself doesn't even really work
Right.
that
Right.
way. The day that you decided that you were going to get a real job, whatever that is to you, you didn't get a job. Maybe for a lot of people, it doesn't work
Right.
that way. You don't just walk in somewhere and they decide to hire you right there on the spot. That's not a lot of people's stories. And so why would that happen in the
Right.
book publishing world? I think that sometimes we get so creative, or like you said, so excited, that we kind of our heads are kind
Mm-hmm.
of in the cloud, for lack of better words, and it's like we got to get a little bit grounded and really understand that no, this is a process, and just like in life, you have to grow, and if you don't grow,
Yes.
you're stagnant. And when you're stagnant, you might be okay with that. Some people are okay with still waters, and then
Yeah.
some people like to keep going with the flow, to keep going with the current. And so it's and I've noticed that even in my own personal life is, man, when I'm really growing in my personal life, I start to see my business grow. I start to see every area in my life continue to grow. But when I start getting stagnant somewhere, it kind of,
Yes.
I'm like, dang, okay, I'm in this season of life and I feel it. I see it reflected in different areas, and that's okay. That's okay. It's I at least I tell myself, like, that's okay. No need to stress over it. But just the
Mm-hmm.
reality
Right.
part, just to keep it real, and check in with yourself
Yes.
from time to time, especially if things are not going the way that you want them to go with your book publishing efforts. That's okay. Check in with yourself. See what you can do. One of the things, I recommend people do is to list their
Mm-hmm.
strengths, list their weaknesses, and list their opportunities. In the business world, we call it SWOT, SWOT, and your threats. But
Right.
whatever, you can list your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and make something shake from that. Maybe you will put out another book. Maybe you will go to your local marketing
Right.
vendor pop-up shop event and just see what it's about. I know for a lot of authors who do not prefer to be on social media, they might decide to, I'm gonna go to do
Mm-hmm.
pop-up shops. I'm gonna do in-person events, face-to-face events, and they've been able to do
Mm-hmm.
really well with that. um and that's their strategy. But I think at the end of the day is being realistic, and then being having a strategy in place, and then being open to
Right.
changing it up, do
Right.
something different, try something else, and then go from there. And your why is
Yes.
like your anchor. This is what's going to
Put.
keep you put, and keep you going, because man, earlier this week I shared that I was getting ready to quit on Fiverr. I was working with authors, and I was like, man, like, whew, just the service business, when you're trying to
Oh
help people, it
yeah.
can be difficult by itself. And then you add another layer of, well, this is my vision, this is what I want it to be, and it's like, well, there's some kind of miscommunication going on. And the book formatting process can be tedious.
Oh
Anytime
yeah.
you change something, that can have a
Yes.
ripple
And you gotta
effect to
start
make
all
the
over.
book look a certain way. and we gotta start all over again. And so it's explaining that and helping people understand. Listen, I always tell authors, because one of the and this has happened to me like twice, and it like is like a trigger for me. Do not order copies, or do not set up like a book signing or like some in-person event until your book is published. I think of people get way ahead of themselves thinking, okay, my book deadline is, April 1st. Here it is, March 28th. Your book is not even up on Amazon. And you talking about you got an event on the 1st?
Yes.
Baby, what? You don't even got your book. Your book is not even published, and you're
Yes.
sweating, the people that you have working with. And so that's the thing. I tell people, wait until you have copies of your books in your hand in order to set up these live events or whatever it is that you want to do, and go from there. Because as a book publisher and publishing professional,
that's not for the
becomes
weak.
like one of the biggest things is, your expectations were not met, so you're pissed off and you're having to rearrange some things. But it's like, hold on, wait, maybe you got a little too ahead. Maybe you weren't aware that things take time. And so that's why I like having these conversations. That's why I been doing book talk, author interview, and I meet with other publishing professionals and have been doing this so that new authors and even seasoned authors can be aware that, man, there's so many different nuances and things to think about, and be honest with yourself about. And so anyway,
on and on, right. Yes, because this world is the publishing world. Period is not for the weak. Because you're right. A lot of people, they come in with great expectations, and when you, not that you can't deliver, but there's going to be things that happen, depending on what they can do, how they want it done, the time, what they're willing to put in, all of that goes in it. And then, they come in with a great expectation, and then when they don't see it the way they want to see it, then it becomes, well, now it's your fault. Now it's your fault that their book isn't selling. And, and I'm like, okay, I'm not taking any royalties, so I didn't think you would expect me to promote every day, all day, every week, getting you in places. I'm like, I'm not making anything anymore. So some of this has to be on you. Just, authors come in with, such a erroneous mindset. They don't research enough. They just talk to people, that don't know a lot. And it takes a lot of learning. Of course, we're still learning. 8 books is not a lot compared to Walter Mosley got 34. Other Juan has 30, 40 books. Like, when I think about that, like, we're like, wow, that's a lot of books. And to them, they're like, oh, this is not enough. We're like, we ain't even got to 10, and they're thinking 34 is they're still going. And so it's just, so we're still learning. I'm sure they're learning because it's authors that came before them, or ones that are with them that they look at and look for guidance. So, like I say, I think all of it, like art, just like the music world, the music industry is changing in the same way. A lot of, unsigned artists are doing better than signed artists, So, and it came to I have more control. I don't have so many demands, and, I'm able to kind of just do what I do. It's a lot of work. But some of them don't complain that they're not on the top 40, because their why is different than the signed people, that maybe have a number 1 on the Billboard charts, but their demands are great compared to this person. So it's just, it's a world that you have to be ready for. And And if you're not ready, you better get ready if this is what you want.
And hey, we can
Yeah.
wrap it up right there. We've been on here
Yeah.
for about an hour, but hey, this was a great conversation. Like I said, we could
Yeah.
go on and on and on. But is there anything else that you would like to share? Where can we find your books?
Okay. You can find my books. All of them are on Amazon. So if you look up each book, you got The True Essence of Loyalty, and that's 1 and 2. You have The Rich Gang, and that's part 1, 2, and Izzy. But if you look up Angie K, all of the books should come up. You'll get True Essence of Loyalty, The Rich Gang, all 3 of those, Climate Control, Introducing Fire. You'll see all of those come up if you look up Angie K or Angie K books on Amazon. And I have a website with Square. So if you look up thebookchick.square.site, my books are on there as well, and I ship them anywhere in the United States. The physical copies, if that's what you're into. My literary services are on there as well. Editing, if you need any of those things. You can find me on Instagram. It is now the book chick _ alt maitre d, because I have too much going on to have 15 social media pages. So the book chick _ alt maitre d, and as well as Facebook, you look up the page Angie K Books, and I'm on there as well. So that's where you can find me, y'all. Join me on Instagram, and I post things, and the website, the link is on there. And that's where I
am. Okay. Well, hey, this was great. This replay will go up shortly. Let me see. Yeah, it'll go up tonight. And so
thank you so much. This was fun.
And you're welcome.
This was fun. I'm trying to do better talking about myself.
Hey, you know what? And we all got to start somewhere. And I'm so glad you said that, because if someone made it to the end of this replay, watching this on the replay, or even, someone watching now, hit your girl up. I got room on my schedule. I got room on my schedule to keep doing these book talks, author interviews, and really wanting to also work on that stigma about independent authors and indie books. I absolutely, mark my words, Aurelia Wynn will be a household name for the work that I've done here with these independent authors. And so I know it. I know. I can feel it in my bones.
I appreciate you so much.
So don't be shy.
I appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, hey,
you too.
Have a good night, and I'll be back on Friday. I'll be back on Friday with my daughter, and so I'm really looking forward to that one. Yes.
All right. You have a good night too. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right.